Today we're talking about Wrexham, something we've spoken about before on this channel, but since then they've recently got promoted to League 2. They finally got out of the National League. I've got Seebs here with me today. You may remember him from some of our past videos. Essentially, we just want to talk about Wrexham, potentially what next season looks like for them. Ryan and Rob came in, they quite publicly said their goal was to get promoted out of the National League. They've finally done that. Huge media coverage. We've seen them on the bus tour, parade through the city. They've obviously signed the likes of Ben Foster as well, goalkeeper, ex-Premier League. A lot of publicity around that. So yeah, we're just going to touch on them today and basically what next season looks like for them. Seba, get us started, mate. What's first on the agenda?
First on the agenda is, like, as you said, what does next season look like for them? Like, what's their next step? They've had their goal of getting out of the National League and now they're in League 2. Like, what's next?
Yeah.
Like, where do they go from here?
Yeah, I guess essentially for me, they've come in and they've made some signings, like Paul Mullen, Ollie Palmer, some big talents to drop down to the National League. You know, they've scored plenty of goals and got them over the line. The likes of Ben Foster as well, as just mentioned. They've got probably the best keeper in the league by a long shot. To start with, I guess Ben Foster, I don't know if he's going to stay. He obviously signed a short-term contract. It was 6 or 7 games just to see them out to the end of the season, obviously with the goal to get them over the line, win the playoff games if they needed to, but they've obviously earned themselves automatic qualification. Is he going to stick around for another season? I guess he kind of bought into the project of, you know, let's get Wrexham out of the National League. That's now done. So a lot of people around the club, are they just ticking like, yep, you know, we had this goal, we've achieved it. It's very hard to then go again. You see a lot of teams that might even like win the title in any league. You know, how many teams actually win it back to back? You've had a goal for so long. How hard is it to actually achieve it and then go, okay, let's reset, do the same thing again? It's quite a rarity. So I guess a lot of that initial project, I wonder if like the mentality has kind of shifted to the point where that's kind of now done, because now instead of this fairy tale story of Wrexham down in the National League, you know, the lowest level of professional football, can they get promoted? They've now done that. So is the attraction as big going forward now that they're in League 2? Or do they kind of fade into the background now, or are they still this global team that has this huge attraction for players here, there and everywhere?
And I guess, like, when you talk about fading into the background, like, if they do fade into the background, like, what's going to happen? So they've had this fairy tale ending where they've gotten out of the National League, everyone's following it. Now they're in League 2. What happens now if they struggle? What happens if they've gone up, they lose, as you said, their goalkeeper, Ben Foster? If they lose him, like, who's going to take his spot? And then is that going to be good enough to keep them in League 2?
Yeah, I guess the big thing about it, like having signed all these top quality players, all these guys dropping down for Wrexham because it is what it is, like the project, the name, the brands,
like being involved in the fairy tale.
Yeah, the story, the documentary, the Hollywood owners, you know, there's so many things that, you know, everyone's probably keen to join them. Whereas now, like you said, if they go into League 2, they're probably still like a big fish in a small pond, but they're not as big. And the other, I was going to keep going with the analogy, and the other fish, they're not just little fish. I was like, do I keep going with this analogy? No, I'll scrap the analogy. Yeah, all of a sudden they go into League 2, you know, the other teams in that league are obviously much better. Will the players they have be enough to compete at that level? You know, obviously won the league in the National League, the league below, but does that necessarily mean they're going to come up and be successful there? So many people watch the Premier League, you see the same clubs get promoted. It's not a rare thing for those teams to get relegated straight away.
Yeah.
And you know, that happens all the way down. Like you could be the best team in this league, but the minute you go up, you're now the worst team in the league above. And whether or not it remains that fairy tale and they keep climbing, you know, these things in football, it takes a lot of investment. You know, they've got these players who potentially form the best team in the National League, but the minute you go up, you now need to inject some new players. You're now competing against League 2 teams. So potentially the bottom players maybe fall off and you just inject maybe some talent, maybe from around Europe, South America, wherever it might be. You might need to start looking at maybe a global market, bring in some players. I guess it's going to take some further financial investment. We know like Rob and Ryan, you know, not doing too bad for themselves. Whether or not they can compete financially in League 2, you'd probably expect so. And, you know, I guess since we did the last video on Wrexham as well, there was some big news that Ryan Reynolds sold his mobile company, Mint Mobile, or at least sold off parts of it. So, you know, him personally, he'd probably have a big injection of funds there. Whether or not he's going to be willing to inject that straight into the club, whether or not it's a bit of a side hobby. But what do you think? Like, if you were a fan, you know, you've seen Wrexham yourself, like all of a sudden they gain some traction and they're winning. Everyone gets on board. It's high spirits. It's happy.
Yeah.
But now next season they're all losing. You know, I've got friends who will support teams. If they have a season where they're doing really bad, you find yourself watching less of the games and not going to the game as much, and you're not spending as much on the merchandise. Kind of how the team's performing very much influences kind of how you feel towards it.
Yeah, well, I know, like, from current experience, my team is not doing well. They've gone from winning the premiership 5 years ago, and now they're fighting for the wooden spoon down at the bottom of the ladder. So I'd say I'm like a diehard fan for my club here. I find myself dreading watching the games because I just know that I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not watching the whole game through anymore. And if that happens, and I'm a diehard fan, like, Wrexham would have picked up so many bandwagon fans.
Yeah, who are just like
over
loosely following.
Who are loosely following it and buying merchandise just because of the story. If they don't perform well, they're going to like drop off real quick.
Well, even like Wrexham, you know, the final run into the end of the season, them and Notts County, it was like a really close, like, fight to the finish kind of thing. That's obviously going to bring in viewers. It's an exciting final straight in that race. Whereas season starts again, they're in League Two. Maybe if they lose a couple of their first games, people now are losing interest. They're not checking the live scores on their phone. You know, you probably see less of it on social media. Brian and Rob can obviously bring it up. You know, like I said, they've got their tour bus. Yeah, they've got everything. Hey, we're winning. We've just been promoted. This, that. You'll see it everywhere in news, headlines, whatever it might be. All of a sudden, if that team's now promoted and not doing as well, I can see the hype quickly dying off. Obviously, you know, hopefully they can go well, but it's a completely different ballgame. They're in the National League for so long that you do learn so much, and you start playing a certain way, and you learn to be good in that league and how to get results, but it's a completely different kettle of fish.
Back to the fish. Oh, man. But yeah, talking about like also the bandwagon fans dropping off, and as you were saying, how they have to inject more money and get new players. Like, all of the players that have achieved this goal have almost become like heroes to the people, like the diehard fans of Wrexham and the people in Wrexham. When you start having to bring in new talent and foreign talent, it's like, how will that be perceived by the fans? Like, are they going to be on board for that? Like, dropping people from there who have been with the club like during the hard times, and then just bringing in new talent just to progress? Or
it
like,
is
how's
a
it going to be?
trade-off.
Are they going to be like welcoming to the new good talent, or are they going to be like a little bit standoffish and be like, oh, they're only here just because we're winning now, like that kind of thing?
No, it's a good point, because obviously from the documentary we saw when Ryan and Rob first wanted, or like expressed their interest in wanting to buy Wrexham, already the board that they had in place were kind of like, well, like, you guys are not from here, you're like American Canadian, why are you wanting to buy us? Like, what's the real reason? So already there's maybe a bit of guard up, and over time we've seen those guys in particular, they've done all the right thing by the club, by the fans, but it's very different now to bring in players, because there's players in the team who are local, they're Welsh or they're British, and everyone gets behind them, supports them. Now you bring in foreign players, I guess you really need them to do well, but how's that going to sit with the local fans now? They're not watching maybe guys they know or from the community playing for the team. You start getting maybe distance from your club, because these guys are not players from Wrexham, or they're not a friend of a friend or a family member who you know. They're now foreigners who have just come in for whatever it might be, whether it's the money or the fame. Like, if their goal one day is to eventually reach the Premier League, they've already got a squad in place, but everyone knows these players that they have right now are not Premier League players. And along the way, as they get promoted, the players are slowly going to be dropping off, and you're going to be bringing new players in. So the squad's going to eventually, even if they get promoted every year, the squad is just forever going to be having to change, because the best National League player maybe can go play in League Two, but the average National League player, you know, is probably maybe going to be like,
going to get cut.
They might not be good in League Two. And as you go into League One, Championship, Premier League, that whole system is going to continue, where you're going to have to get your squad and start cutting the lower end and start adding at the top and progressing, which again, it's going to take a lot of money to invest into new players, higher fees. Who knows what it's going to look like? I guess for the fans as well, like, it's been such a fairy tale. I know for me, there's been such a clear goal that they've stated about getting promoted, that now they've done it. What does it look like to keep going from there? And what does the League Two looks like? It's going to be a big jump, and it's exponential as you move up. Like, National League
is like so much bigger the more you go up.
Like if they get to League Two, it's going to be a jump, but then like League Two to League One, it's going to be a bigger jump. League One to Championship, massive jump, and then Championship to Premier League is like astronomical. So whether or not they can keep it up, and whether or not, I mean, obviously we're hoping that they can go straight up and get promoted again, but in terms of like football terms and what we've seen in the past, it tends to take some time, because it's a slow build and it's very gradual.
Yeah, because they've had the squad for 2 seasons, then they've like just gone out of National League. So that's pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Promoted within 2 seasons. Because it was such a quick turnaround, that's why it like gained so much traction and like it's actually working. That's why everyone got on board.
As well as the Hollywood status of
as
the
well
owners.
as the Hollywood, like if it wasn't Ryan Reynolds above, like no one would know what's going on. Like no one would have any interest except for those people from Wrexham who are already fans. But now that they're going to another league, like how many seasons is it going to take for them to reach whatever goal they set for themselves?
Yeah.
Everyone is now expecting them or hoping for them to like get promoted straight away or whatever. And realistically, that's a tough ask.
Oh, yeah,
like massive ask. So how long is it going to take, and will the hype die down whilst that's happening?
My gut instinct, I already think that the hype will probably die down. I mean, you know, everyone's expecting season 2 of the Welcome to Wrexham documentary to come out, and everyone's kind of holding their breath on that. But we already kind of like know the spoilers of what happens, that, you know, they do get promoted.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some kind of where that's like the chapter closed. And it's now, okay, League 2, let's get promoted from that. And yeah, if it took 2 seasons for them just to come in and get promoted from the National League, I'd expect it to take a bit longer because the league is more competitive now. Every time you get promoted, the pot of gold at the end is even bigger. Like there's more money that you're chasing if you want to get out. Like National League's making X amount, League 2's making even more, League 1's making even more than that. So the prize to get out of the league becomes greater and greater.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gets way more competitive, and whether or not they'll have to bring someone in, or whether they've got enough cash for those guys for Deadpool to just get his wallet out and just keep investing in players, it's going to take a lot. And even like as they go up, there's certain grades around stadium capacity and certain quotas you need to meet. There's financial fair play that starts to come in that people need to meet. Make sure you don't spend more than you're earning. And there's a lot of different rules that you need to abide by, which can complicate things. But I guess for myself and us and the general viewer, you're just kind of hoping they still do well. But they've obviously would have brought a lot of people on board for the ride. And it's a whole new chapter now, like going forward and what's going to happen next season.
Yeah, you'll know out who the real fans are, for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, you'll see who's going to stick around now and who's like kind of, oh, cool, we saw him get promoted on to the next thing. Yeah. Let's go find a basketball team to follow or like whatever it is. But yeah, anything further you want to add there?
No, it's all good.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, all right, guys, that pretty much wraps up all our thoughts today on Wrexham and what next season will look for them in League 2. If you want them to stay in League 2 and potentially get promoted from there, make sure you like this video. Subscribe as well if you've enjoyed the conversation we've had today. But anyways, this has been Seebs.
Cheers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he speaks. I'm Ed. This has been Red Mate. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.